Imagine looking at a world ruled by capricious gods and angry monsters, and daring to suggest that nature follows its own logical laws. Over 2,600 years ago, in the bustling ports of ancient Ionia, one man single-handedly shifted the course of human consciousness forever. He looked past the myths of Zeus and Poseidon to ask a radical question: what is the fundamental stuff that everything is made of? His name was Thales of Miletus, and this is the story of the brilliant thinker who became the world's very first philosopher.
To truly appreciate Thales, we have to travel back to the vibrant 6th century before Christ in Miletus, a thriving Greek city-state on the coast of modern-day Turkey. This bustling commercial hub was the perfect melting pot of ideas, where merchants from Egypt, Babylon, and Phoenicia constantly traded both goods and cultural stories. In this dynamic environment, young Thales grew up surrounded by competing mythologies, which likely sparked his deep skepticism about traditional religious explanations. Instead of accepting that Poseidon was just Poseidon throwing a temper tantrum, he began looking for physical, observable causes in the world around him. This sudden pivot from myth to reason was a massive turning point, effectively birthing the intellectual tradition we now call Western philosophy. While his contemporaries blamed the changing seasons on the whims of the gods, Thales sought a unified principle that could explain all of nature. He pioneered a school of thought known as natural philosophy, which relied on observation and logic rather than supernatural intervention. By daring to question the established religious dogma of his time, he set a brand new standard for how humans analyze their environment. His approach was not just about finding answers, it was about asking entirely new kinds of questions that could be debated and tested. This foundational shift is precisely why later thinkers, including Aristotle himself, universally recognize Thales as the true pioneer of scientific thought. We must understand that before Thales came along, human knowledge was deeply intertwined with ritual, superstition, and fear of the unknown. He looked at the chaos of the cosmos and boldly claimed that it was actually an ordered, predictable system governed by comprehensible laws. This radical confidence in human intellect gave ordinary people the power to understand reality without needing a priest to interpret it for them. Even though his specific conclusions might seem primitive to us today, his methodology was nothing short of a profound intellectual revolution. He taught the world to stop looking up at Mount Olympus for answers and to start looking closely at the earth beneath their feet.
The intellectual atmosphere of Miletus allowed Thales to gather a circle of brilliant minds who eagerly questioned the nature of reality. This informal gathering of thinkers would eventually be recognized by historians as the famous Milesian School, the very first philosophical movement. Here, Thales fostered an environment where student and teacher could openly debate, disagree, and refine each other's theories with rigorous logic. This open-minded tradition was incredibly rare in ancient societies, which usually demanded absolute obedience to traditional myths and royal decrees. By encouraging critical feedback, Thales ensured that his spark of rational inquiry would grow into a roaring fire that illuminated the ancient world. It is fascinating to realize that Thales did not leave behind a single surviving book, meaning his entire legacy was preserved by later admirers. Thinkers like Herodotus and Aristotle wrote extensively about him, ensuring that his revolutionary ideas would never be lost to history. They described a man who was deeply obsessed with understanding the physical mechanisms that kept the universe running smoothly day after day. His life became a living proof that the human mind is fully capable of untangling the deepest mysteries of existence through patient observation. By establishing this brilliant precedent, he laid down the very first brick in the grand architecture of global science and philosophy. When we look at the legacy of this early period, we see a clean break from the poetic myth-making of famous writers like Homer and Hesiod. Thales decided that stories of divine drama were no longer sufficient to explain the tangible reality of the physical world. He wanted concrete evidence, logical consistency, and universal principles that applied to every single object in the known universe. This relentless drive for a singular rational explanation is what truly separates his work from all the ancient mythologies that came before him. He essentially unlocked a brand new mode of human consciousness, paving the way for centuries of rigorous scientific exploration to come. The beauty of Thales' early work lies in its sheer simplicity and its absolute trust in the power of human sensory perception. He believed that if we look closely enough at nature, it will naturally reveal its secrets through observable patterns and cycles. This optimistic worldview encouraged his fellow citizens to become active investigators of their environment rather than passive victims of fate. It allowed people to imagine a world where knowledge was not a divine gift hidden away by the gods, but a treasure waiting to be discovered. By shifting the focus from heaven to earth, he taught humanity that reality is something we can actually comprehend. As we examine the historical records, it becomes clear that Thales was much more than an abstract thinker sitting in an ivory tower. He was a deeply practical man who used his philosophical insights to solve real-world problems for his community. This balance of deep metaphysical wonder and sharp everyday practicality made him a legendary figure among the ancient Greeks. People realized that this new way of thinking was not just a harmless hobby, but a powerful tool for improving human life. His unique ability to connect the profound mysteries of the universe with daily life set the tone for all future philosophers. Historians often marvel at how a single individual could trigger such a massive paradigm shift without any modern scientific equipment. Thales had no telescopes, no computers, and no advanced mathematics, yet his raw logical intuition was incredibly sharp. He relied entirely on the power of his mind, paired with a relentless curiosity that refused to be satisfied by easy myths. This proves that the greatest asset in the history of thought has always been our basic human capacity to wonder. His life serves as a beautiful reminder that a single thought, well nourished, can completely change the direction of an entire civilization. To truly understand the impact of his philosophy, we must realize that he was essentially inventing the rules of debate as he went along. He did not just proclaim truths, he invited his students to find flaws in his arguments and propose better explanations. This democratic approach to knowledge was a radical departure from the autocratic traditions of the ancient Near East. In Miletus, an idea was judged by its logical merit, not by the wealth or religious authority of the person speaking it. This brilliant cultural innovation created a safe space for intellectual freedom, which is the absolute lifeblood of genuine philosophy. As we look deeper into his story, we find a man who genuinely loved the pursuit of truth for its own sake. Thales was not seeking fame, wealth, or political power when he began his lifelong investigation into the laws of nature. He was simply driven by an internal burning need to understand the true structure of the reality he inhabited. This pure, unadulterated curiosity is the defining characteristic of what it truly means to be a philosopher. By embodying this ideal, he inspired generations of future seekers to dedicate their lives to the quiet, noble pursuit of wisdom. Ultimately, the dawn of rational inquiry under Thales was less about the specific answers he found and more about the path he cleared. He stood at the absolute edge of human ignorance and chose to light a torch of reason rather than cower in the dark. His courage to think differently created a profound ripple effect, traveling through Athens, Rome, and eventually the entire modern world. Every time we conduct a scientific experiment or demand logical proof, we are walking in the very footsteps of Thales. He gave humanity its most precious gift, which is the unwavering belief that the universe can be understood through the power of reason. Now, let's dive into the core of Thales' philosophical theory, which famously claimed that water is the fundamental substance of everything. In philosophical terms, he was searching for the arche, meaning the primary element or originating principle of the entire universe. To our modern ears, saying everything is made of water sounds incredibly strange, but his underlying logic was brilliant. He looked around his coastal city and noticed that water is absolutely essential for the birth, growth, and survival of every living creature. By identifying a single physical element as the source of all existence, he made the first attempt at a unified theory of matter. Thales observed that water is uniquely versatile, capable of transforming into different states right before our very eyes. He saw it freeze into solid ice, flow as a liquid river, and evaporate into invisible vapor or heavy mist. To an ancient mind, this incredible shape-shifting ability suggested that water could easily transform into rocks, air, and living tissues. He reasoned that if one substance could change so drastically, it must be the foundational building block of the entire cosmos. This was a monumental leap forward because it replaced a chaotic world of multiple deities with a single harmonious physical principle. Furthermore, Thales was deeply influenced by the natural geography of his home city of Miletus, which was surrounded by the Aegean Sea. He watched how the life-giving waters of the local rivers deposited rich silt, literally creating new fertile land over time. He noticed that seeds require moisture to germinate, and that all food contains moisture, while dead things dry up and decay. From these constant everyday observations, he logically concluded that water is the active, animating force behind all physical transformations. It was not just a passive liquid to him, it was a divine, self-moving essence that breathed life into the world.
It is highly likely that Thales also traveled to Egypt, where he witnessed the massive annual flooding of the Great Nile River. He saw firsthand how the rising waters turned a barren, dusty desert into a lush paradise teeming with crops and life. This dramatic contrast must have reinforced his grand theory that water is the ultimate source of all biological existence. In Egyptian mythology, the universe emerged from a primeval water called Nu, but Thales stripped away the mythological gods from this story. He took a widespread cultural observation and reframed it as a purely physical, scientific law of the natural world. By arguing that everything is ultimately water, Thales became the very first material monist in the history of human thought. Monism is the philosophical belief that reality is ultimately composed of just one single underlying substance or principle. This concept is incredibly important because it assumes that despite the immense diversity we see, the universe is fundamentally unified. Modern physics carries on this exact same mission today as scientists search for a single equation to explain all physical forces. Thales was the very first to realize that beneath the surface chaos of the world, there lies a beautiful, hidden simplicity. We should also mention his famous, mind-boggling assertion that the Earth actually floats on water like a massive wooden log. He used this specific hypothesis to explain the terrifying phenomenon of earthquakes, which regularly shook the ancient Mediterranean region. Instead of believing that an angry god was shaking the ground, Thales argued that the floating Earth was simply tossed by rough cosmic waves. While his floating Earth model was scientifically incorrect, the way he attempted to explain it using natural physics was entirely revolutionary. He replaced religious terror with a rational, mechanical explanation that people could discuss, analyze, and eventually correct.
This water theory also led Thales to declare that the entire universe is alive and full of souls or vital energy. He did not view matter as dead, cold, or mechanical. Instead, he saw it as something inherently dynamic and self-sustaining. Because water moves on its own accord, he believed it possessed a kind of internal, natural soul that drove all change. This ancient perspective, often called hyloism, viewed the cosmos as a living, breathing organism rather than a static machine. It was his beautiful way of explaining how motion and change could exist in a world made of a single element. When we look closer at this philosophy, we see that Thales was trying to solve the great riddle of permanence and change. He wondered how things could constantly change their appearance while still remaining part of the exact same unified universe. His brilliant answer was that while the outward form changes, the underlying substance, which is water, remains completely eternal and indestructible. This remarkably anticipates the modern scientific law of the conservation of mass, which states that matter cannot be created or destroyed. Thales intuitively understood that nature is an endless dance of a single permanent material taking on infinite beautiful shapes. His water theory also provided a radical new framework for understanding the nature of human beings and our place in the cosmos. If everything is made of water, then humans are not separate from nature, but are deeply connected to the entire universe. We are made of the exact same stardust and liquid element that forms the oceans, the clouds, and the distant stars. This profound insight brought a sense of cosmic harmony and belonging that contrasted sharply with the terrifying capriciousness of mythological gods. Thales helped humanity feel at home in a universe that was rational, predictable, and fundamentally made of the same familiar stuff. Naturally, his immediate students at the Milesian School did not accept his water theory blindly, which is exactly what Thales wanted. His brilliant pupil, Anaximander, argued that water could not be the primary element because it could not explain its opposite, which is fire. Anaximander proposed a different, abstract concept called the apeiron, meaning the boundless or the infinite, as the true source of reality. This friendly intellectual rebellion is the perfect proof that Thales' greatest success was not his specific water theory, but the critical debate it sparked. He created a culture where students were expected to challenge their teachers using logic, birthing the scientific method. It is truly beautiful to see how Thales' watery cosmos echoes through the halls of modern astrophysics and astrobiology today. When researchers search for signs of alien life on distant planets or moons, their primary motto is always to follow the water. We still believe, just as Thales did 2,600 years ago, that liquid water is the absolute prerequisite for life. While our understanding of chemistry has evolved significantly, his core intuition about the unique, life-giving power of water remains completely undisputed. He looked at a simple glass of water and saw the entire secret of existence staring right back at him. To wrap up this central pillar of his thought, Thales' water theory stands as a majestic monument to human imagination. It shows a mind refusing to accept that the world is a chaotic, meaningless series of random events managed by invisible spirits. He had the immense intellectual courage to look at the vast diversity of nature and declare that it is all fundamentally one. This magnificent quest for unity is the very heartbeat of both philosophy and modern physics, and it all began with water. Thales proved that with nothing but careful observation and clear thinking, humans can begin to decode the deepest secrets of reality. Beyond his deep philosophical theories about the cosmos, Thales was widely celebrated as a master of practical wisdom and ingenuity. In the ancient world, he was universally included in the prestigious list of the 7 sages of Greece, a group of elite thinkers praised for their brilliant real-world advice. He proved to his fellow citizens that philosophy was not just an abstract mental game, but a highly useful tool for daily life. Thales frequently applied his sharp observation skills to solve difficult engineering, political, and financial problems that left others completely baffled. His life became a shining example of how a sharp, philosophical mind can master almost any practical discipline it chooses. One of the most famous and entertaining stories about Thales involves a brilliant financial move that left his critics completely speechless. For years, people had mocked him, saying that philosophy was completely useless because it did not make him a wealthy man. To teach them a lesson, Thales used his deep knowledge of weather patterns to predict that the upcoming season would yield a massive olive harvest. While it was still winter, he went around and quietly rented every single olive press in Miletus and neighboring Chios for a very low price. When the bumper harvest arrived exactly as he predicted, everyone desperately needed a press, allowing Thales to rent them out at a premium. This legendary olive press venture made him an absolute fortune overnight. But he did not care about the money itself. He simply wanted to demonstrate that philosophers can easily become wealthy if they truly desire to, but their minds are set on much higher pursuits. He proved that wisdom has immense practical value, and that poverty is often a deliberate choice for those who value truth over gold. This story, famously recorded by Aristotle, remains one of the earliest and most brilliant examples of market speculation and monopoly in human history. It showed the ancient world that a deep understanding of natural cause and effect could be turned into real material power.
In addition to his financial genius, Thales was an incredibly talented military engineer who saved an entire army with his clever problem-solving. During a tense military campaign, King Croesus of Lydia found his massive army completely blocked by the wide and roaring Halys River. With no bridges in sight and the enemy closing in, the situation looked entirely hopeless for the stranded soldiers. Thales stepped forward and calmly ordered the men to dig a deep, crescent-shaped trench right behind the army's camp. This brilliant diversion channel forced the river to split into two shallow streams, making it incredibly easy for the entire army to safely wade across. This stunning engineering feat completely amazed his contemporaries, who had never seen anyone manipulate the forces of nature so effectively. Thales did not pray to the river gods or offer expensive sacrifices. He simply used basic physics and geometry to reshape the landscape. He treated the mighty river not as a sacred deity to be feared, but as a natural force that could be managed through human intellect. This practical triumph sent a powerful message across the ancient world. Human reason can overcome massive physical obstacles that seem completely insurmountable. His engineering work bridged the gap between abstract science and practical human progress. Thales was also a highly respected political advisor who possessed a remarkably visionary understanding of international relations and cooperation. He foresaw that the independent, scattered Greek city-states of Ionia were in grave danger of being conquered by the massive, aggressive Persian Empire. To protect their freedom, he traveled to the city of Teos and boldly proposed a revolutionary political alliance among all the Ionian cities. He urged them to establish a single, centralized governing council while still maintaining their individual local laws and cultural identities. Although the cities unfortunately ignored his wise advice and were later conquered, historians still praise Thales for inventing the concept of a federal political union.
There is another delightful, famous anecdote about Thales that perfectly captures the classic stereotype of the distracted, absent-minded professor. The story goes that one clear night, Thales was walking along, staring intently up at the stars, completely lost in his astronomical thoughts. Because his eyes were fixed on the heavens, he did not notice a deep ditch right in front of him and tumbled straight into it. A witty Thracian maidservant who witnessed the fall laughed out loud, mocking him for being so eager to know what was happening in the sky while completely missing what was right at his feet. This light-hearted story became incredibly famous in antiquity, with even Plato using it to describe the unique nature of the philosophical life. It highlights the beautiful, amusing contrast between the philosopher's grand cosmic vision and the mundane realities of everyday human existence. Thales was not falling into ditches because he was foolish. He fell because his mind was traveling through the infinite expanse of the cosmos. It reminds us that seeking the ultimate truth often requires a willingness to look away from the immediate, boring details of daily life. The story balances his image as a wealthy businessman and sharp engineer, showing his true, endearing love for pure contemplation. Thales' practical wisdom also extended to the realm of human relations, ethics, and the art of living a truly good, meaningful life. When people asked him what was the most difficult thing in the world, he gave a legendary short answer: to know oneself. Conversely, when they asked him what was the easiest thing, he replied with equal wit: to give advice to others. These sharp, unforgettable aphorisms were later carved into the stone walls of the sacred temple of Apollo at Delphi, guiding millions of travelers. They show that Thales was just as deeply concerned with the inner landscape of the human soul as he was with the outer cosmos.
When asked how a person could live a perfectly just and virtuous life, Thales gave a beautifully simple and profound rule. He said we should absolutely refrain from doing the exact things that we would actively blame or criticize others for doing. This remarkable insight is one of the earliest historical expressions of the universal golden rule, which forms the bedrock of modern ethics. Long before complex moral philosophies were written down, Thales understood that true justice begins with personal self-reflection and empathy. His ethical teachings proved that a rational understanding of nature naturally leads to a compassionate, balanced approach to human society. It is incredibly inspiring to see how Thales completely redefined the very concept of success and honor in the ancient Greek world. Before his time, true heroes were almost exclusively strong warriors, powerful kings, or wealthy aristocrats who won glory on the bloody battlefield. Thales showed his society that a quiet citizen armed with nothing but a sharp mind could achieve an even greater, more enduring immortality. He brought immense honor to his home city of Miletus purely through the intellectual glory of his mind-boggling discoveries and practical achievements. He paved the way for an age where thinkers, scientists, and philosophers were treated as the true leaders of humanity. Ultimately, Thales of Miletus proved that genuine wisdom is never a luxury or a useless distraction from the real world. His life was a beautiful tapestry woven from deep metaphysical speculation, brilliant scientific discovery, and highly effective practical action. He could predict the stars, corner the commodity market, redirect a roaring river, and offer timeless moral guidance to kings and commoners alike. By mastering both the theoretical and the practical worlds, he set a magnificent standard for all future philosophers to aspire toward. Thales demonstrated that when the human mind is illuminated by reason, it becomes the most powerful and practical force on earth.
Let's now turn our attention to Thales' incredible mathematical achievements, which laid the very foundations of deductive geometry. During his extensive travels to ancient Egypt, he studied their practical techniques of land surveying, which they used to redraw property lines after the Nile flooded. The Egyptians used mathematics as a practical recipe book, but Thales wanted to understand the universal logical rules behind these shapes. He took their practical knowledge back to Greece and transformed it into an abstract logical science based on rigorous proof. By doing so, he became the first person in history to apply deductive reasoning to the study of geometry. One of his most legendary and mind-boggling mathematical feats occurred right at the foot of the magnificent Great Pyramid of Giza. The Egyptian priests and Pharaoh's advisors were completely amazed when Thales offered to calculate the exact height of the massive structure. He did not use any complex climbing gear or long measuring ropes. Instead, he simply used a short stick and a brilliant understanding of shadows. He waited patiently for the precise moment of the day when his own shadow was exactly equal in length to his actual height.
He reasoned that at that exact instant, the giant pyramid's shadow would also be perfectly equal to its true height. By simply measuring the length of the pyramid's shadow on the desert sand, he instantly revealed its secret height to the astonished crowd. This elegant demonstration was a spectacular triumph of human intellect over brute physical size, showcasing the immense power of abstract mathematical thinking. Thales used the simple universal law of similar triangles to solve a problem that had frustrated people for centuries. He proved that the most massive physical structures on Earth could be easily measured using nothing but a basic geometric principle. This moment perfectly symbolized the birth of Greek mathematics, which sought to measure the infinite universe using elegant logic. Thales did not stop at practical demonstrations. He is credited with discovering and proving several fundamental geometric theorems that are still taught in classrooms today. He was the very first person to logically demonstrate that a circle is perfectly bisected into two equal halves by its diameter. While this fact might seem incredibly obvious to us today, Thales was the first to realize that such claims require absolute logical proof. He taught humanity that in mathematics, we cannot rely on what looks true. We must prove it using a step-by-step chain of reasoning. This insistence on strict logical proof is what separates true mathematics from mere guesswork. He also discovered that the base angles of any isosceles triangle, which means a triangle with two sides of equal length, are always perfectly equal to each other. Furthermore, he demonstrated that when two straight lines intersect each other, the opposite vertical angles created are always completely identical. These foundational rules might seem simple, but they are the essential building blocks used to construct everything from ancient temples to modern skyscrapers. Thales was essentially mapping out the deep, hidden mathematical laws that govern the physical space we inhabit every single day. He looked at raw shapes and discovered a beautiful, orderly language of absolute truth. Perhaps his most famous mathematical contribution is a beautiful rule known to this very day across the world as Thales' theorem. This elegant theorem states that if you draw a triangle inside a circle using the diameter as one side, the opposite angle will always be a perfect 90-degree right angle. No matter where you place the third point along the circle's curved edge, the resulting triangle will always form a flawless right angle. This stunning discovery revealed a deep, necessary connection between circles and triangles that completely blew the minds of ancient thinkers. It showed that mathematical space is not random, but is governed by beautiful, unyielding geometric laws. This specific theorem was not just a beautiful piece of abstract art. It had immense practical value for ancient sailors navigating the open seas. Sailors could use Thales' theorem to determine their exact distance from the coastline by observing known landmarks through right-angled triangles. It allowed them to map out safe shipping lanes and avoid hidden dangerous rocks during treacherous nighttime voyages. Thales took an abstract geometric truth and turned it into a life-saving navigation tool that expanded ancient maritime trade. He proved that understanding the laws of geometry could help humans conquer the unpredictable and dangerous oceans. Historians of mathematics emphasize that Thales completely revolutionized the way human beings interact with numbers and abstract concepts. Before him, the Babylonians and Egyptians used math primarily for practical chores like tax calculation, grain storage, and building construction. Thales decoupled mathematics from these immediate physical tasks, treating lines, angles, and points as pure, ideal concepts existing in the mind. This brilliant shift allowed mathematics to become a universal language of absolute certainty, completely independent of human culture or bias. He unlocked a realm of pure, eternal truths that remain completely unchanged after thousands of years. By introducing the concept of deductive proof, Thales laid the direct groundwork for future mathematical giants like Pythagoras and Euclid. Euclid's famous book, The Elements, which shaped human education for over 2 millennia, is built entirely on the deductive method that Thales pioneered. Every time a student writes a geometric proof today, they are participating in an intellectual ritual started by Thales in Miletus. He showed us that the human mind can achieve absolute certainty about reality by following a rigorous, unbreakable chain of logic. His work in geometry was a profound celebration of the clarity and order of the human intellect. It is deeply fascinating to consider how his work in geometry directly influenced his grand philosophical theories about the entire universe. Geometry taught Thales that beneath the messy, imperfect shapes we see in the physical world, there are perfect, orderly laws. He naturally applied this mathematical optimism to the entire cosmos, assuming that nature must be just as orderly and logical as geometry. If a complex triangle could be understood through simple rules, then surely the entire universe could be decoded using a few basic principles. Mathematics gave him the intellectual confidence to launch the grand project of Western philosophy. Thales's mathematical discoveries also helped strip away the deep-seated fear of geometric anomalies and bad omens that terrified ancient societies. People often viewed unusual natural shapes or alignments as scary signs of anger from the gods. Thales showed them that these occurrences were simply the natural, beautiful results of universal geometric laws in action. By explaining the world mathematically, he helped replace superstition with a sense of wonder and intellectual security. He taught humanity to look at the geometry of the world not with fear, but with an eager desire to learn and understand. To conclude our look at his mathematical legacy, Thales of Miletus truly unlocked the geometric secrets of the universe. He took the practical, dusty measurements of Egypt and elevated them into a noble, eternal science of pure human reason. His brilliant ability to measure a giant pyramid with a simple stick proved that intellect will always triumph over physical size. Through his theorems, he revealed that the universe is written in a beautiful, orderly language of logic that humans can master. Thales showed us that geometry is not just about lines on paper, but about the elegant structure of reality itself. Perhaps the most dramatic and legendary event in Thales' entire life was his stunning, mind-boggling prediction of a total solar eclipse. According to the ancient historian Herodotus, Thales accurately foretold the exact year when the daytime sun would completely disappear behind the moon. At the time, solar eclipses were viewed with absolute terror as ominous signs of divine wrath and impending doom. People believed that a cosmic monster was swallowing the sun because the gods were deeply angry with humanity. Thales challenged this ancient terror by treating the eclipse as a predictable, natural cycle governed by the regular laws of astronomy. To make this incredible prediction, Thales carefully studied the ancient astronomical records kept by the Babylonians over hundreds of years. He looked past the mythological stories in their texts and focused entirely on the raw data of dates, times, and planetary positions. He noticed a recurring mathematical pattern in the timing of eclipses, a celestial cycle that modern astronomers call the Saros period. By applying clear logic to this historical data, he realized that the movements of the sun and moon followed an unbreakable schedule. His brilliant prediction was a magnificent triumph of data-driven science over ancient, fear-induced superstition. The eclipse actually occurred on May 28, 585 before Christ, right in the middle of a fierce, bloody battle between the Medes and the Lydians. For 6 long years, these two powerful nations had been locked in a brutal, destructive war with no end in sight. Suddenly, right as the battle raged, the bright afternoon sky turned into a dark, eerie night, exactly as Thales had predicted. The soldiers were completely struck with awe and terror, dropping their weapons and immediately declaring peace with one another. Thales' scientific insight did not just advance human knowledge, it literally stopped a bloody war and brought peace to the region. This historical event, known to modern scholars as the Battle of the Eclipse, is widely considered the absolute birth date of Western science. For the first time in recorded history, a major natural phenomenon was accurately predicted using human reason rather than divine revelation. Thales proved to the entire ancient world that the heavenly bodies do not move according to the chaotic whims of angry gods. Instead, they follow an orderly, mechanical path that can be calculated and understood by a human being using basic mathematics. He took the keys to the heavens away from the priests and handed them over to science. In addition to his famous eclipse prediction, Thales made several other profound contributions to our understanding of the cosmos and astronomy. He was one of the very first thinkers to determine that the sun's path across the sky changes in a predictable circular cycle. He accurately identified the precise dates of the summer and winter solstices, the longest and shortest days of the year. By mapping out these celestial milestones, he helped his fellow citizens create a much more accurate and reliable agricultural calendar. He proved that astronomy was deeply useful for tracking the seasons and ensuring human survival. Thales also turned his sharp gaze toward the mysterious night sky, closely studying the stars to help sailors navigate the dangerous Mediterranean Sea. He discovered that the constellation Ursa Minor, commonly known as the Little Dipper, was a far more reliable navigation tool than the Big Dipper. He urged Greek captains to use the Little Dipper because its stars are much closer to the true celestial North Pole. This brilliant advice completely revolutionized nighttime navigation, allowing sailors to travel much further from the coast with absolute confidence. Thales used his cosmic knowledge to build practical, real-world pathways for human exploration and global commerce. It is deeply inspiring to realize that Thales also accurately deduced that the moon does not actually produce its own light. He observed the changing phases of the moon and logically concluded that it merely reflects the bright light of the sun. This was a monumental scientific insight that shattered the ancient myth that the moon was a glowing, independent deity. He looked at the night sky and saw a physical, rocky ball interacting with solar light according to the laws of optics. This simple deduction brought a beautiful mathematical clarity to the mysterious rhythms of the night sky. He also calculated the apparent size of the sun and the moon relative to their cosmic orbits with astonishing accuracy for his time. He estimated that the sun's diameter was exactly 1/720th of the total circle of its celestial path across the sky. While his tools were primitive, his mathematical approach to calculating cosmic distances was entirely revolutionary and set a new standard for astronomy. He treated the vast, terrifying expanse of the universe as a measurable geometric puzzle that could be solved with patience. Thales helped humanity realize that the stars are not distant, untouchable gods, but physical objects open to human study. Naturally, his astonishing astronomical achievements made him a legendary figure, earning him a reputation as a man who could communicate with the cosmos. People traveled from far and wide to Miletus just to hear the first philosopher explain the mechanics of the heavens. Thales always remained humble, emphasizing that his knowledge came from careful observation and study, not from magic or secret divine visions. He openly shared his astronomical methods, encouraging his students to keep scanning the skies and refining his calculations. He created a community of active stargazers who looked at the night sky with curiosity instead of fear. The intellectual shockwave caused by his eclipse prediction completely reshaped the cultural landscape of ancient Greece and the wider Mediterranean world. It exposed the deep flaws in the traditional religious worldview, which relied on superstition to explain the movements of nature. If a human could predict an eclipse, then the world was clearly not run by the unpredictable whims of angry Olympian gods. This realization gave thinkers the immense courage to question every single aspect of traditional mythology and religious dogma. Thales opened a massive floodgate of intellectual freedom that could never be closed again by priests or kings. Modern astronomers look back at Thales' work with an immense sense of professional respect and gratitude for his pioneering spirit. Using advanced computer models, modern scientists have tracked the 585 before Christ eclipse down to the exact minute and location, confirming his historical achievement. He stands at the absolute pinnacle of early astronomy, a brilliant bridge connecting ancient Babylonian data with Greek logical analysis. He showed us that the sky is a grand, beautiful clockwork mechanism, ticking away according to universal laws. His work proved that the human mind can reach out across millions of miles to decode the secrets of the stars. To bring our journey through his astronomical achievements to a close, Thales truly unlocked the mysterious secrets of the heavens. By predicting the eclipse, he transformed a moment of absolute superstitious terror into a spectacular celebration of human reason. He mapped the stars, corrected the calendar, guided the sailors safely home, and revealed that the moon shines with borrowed solar light. He looked up at the vast, terrifying night sky and did not see angry gods. He saw a beautiful, orderly system of geometry in motion. Thales proved that when we look at the heavens through the lens of reason, the darkness fades away.
Thank you so much for watching this deep dive into the life of Thales of Miletus on philosophy and history of thought. If you found this journey into the birth of reason inspiring, please make sure to hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and share your thoughts in the comments below to support the channel. Our absolute goal here is to build a serious, reliable, and deeply detailed archive of human wisdom that honors the incredible history of global philosophy. By subscribing, you are actively helping us preserve these timeless intellectual treasures and bring them to life for a brand new generation of thinkers. Stay curious, keep questioning the world around you, and I will see you in our very next video as we continue to unlock the greatest ideas in human history.